The scraper is an awesome tool for removing small amounts of material without getting any tear out. The trick is sharpening it and using it. It isn't that difficult once you figure it out, but it usually takes people a few times to kind of get a sense of all the steps and getting all the steps correct, and then using it, getting that muscle memory. But I think once you figured it out, you're really going to like using this tool. So I'm going to walk through the steps to sharpen it per the instructions on the website on Canvas, and we'll see if we can make this thing sing. This particular scraper is an old one that I've had laying around. I'm not actually sure where it came from. It's kind of on the small side, but the thickness is about a 32nd, so that's the typical size for or thickness for a scraper. The thinner ones are a little more difficult to sharpen and to use just because they flex so much. So I would strongly recommend you start with a 1/32 thick scraper, about 30 thousandths. The other thing to note is that a lot of these scrapers are not perfectly flat. Because of how these are made, they typically have a convex side and a concave side. So it's best to figure out if yours has that, and work the concave side as opposed to the convex side. You're going to have much better luck. Ideally, you've got one that's perfectly flat, because if you do, then you can get 4 different edges, 1, 2, 3, and 4. This particular one is noticeably concave on this surface. So I'm only going to sharpen one of these edges for the demonstration. I could sharpen 2 on this one. I think doing the other 2 on this particular scraper would be wasted effort. So we're going to start by flattening the face, and then we'll move on from there. I'm going to start by working the face on this diamond stone. This is a coarse diamond stone, and you can use water stones too, but I find for scrapers the diamond stones work a little better. Of course, they stay flat, and we don't have issues with making the stone concave. So one thing to keep in mind is that this is a flexible thing, and you really need to put pressure right at the edge in order to get the surface that you want. So I have to actually move my fingers around here, and I'm moving. Notice I'm moving this diagonally at about a 45-degree angle. If I was using my water stones, I'd do exactly the same thing. And we'll take a look at this, and you can see, this thing is not very flat. I've got a high spot there. I'm getting most of this edge along here. I'm going to see if I can work this end a little more. So, this thing is really a mess. I'm going to try working this other edge. Always, when you pick the scraper up, don't slide it off. You want to make sure you pick it straight up. Okay, so this edge looks pretty good. I'm not getting all the way to the corners, but I'm getting majority of the edge there. So I'm just going to work that a little bit more. Okay, I'm going to end up with just a little lighter pressure there. And pick that up. So that looks good. It's like I said, it's not reaching the corners, but that's going to be fine. It's pretty rare I need the corner. So I'm going to switch to a little finer stone. This is now the fine stone. Now, if I was using water stones, I would use my 1000 and then the 4000. I would not go past 4000 grit, and you can even just use the 4000 and be fine. I'm sorry, the 1000 and be fine. That's going to give you a pretty fine edge. Okay, so that looks nice and clean there. I'm going to stick with that. So next, we'll work on the edge itself. We'll go to use the file in a vise. I'm going to start by filing the edge of the scraper. So I'm going to clamp it in a vise, and I want it up about 3/4 of an inch to an inch above the surface of the workbench. That will allow me, as I'm filing, to run my hand along here and maintain the angle better than if it was up in the air and I had no reference. So I've got that in the vise. I've got a fine file. That works best. Sometimes fine files are hard to find, so you might need the next coarsest file, which would be called a bastard file. But fine really works well. That'll give me a nice smooth surface there. So the file only cuts on the push stroke, so I only want to be pushing. Don't drag the file backwards with any pressure on it. And I'm just going to push forward I'm pushing down relatively hard just to make sure it's cutting. Sometimes, depending on what has happened previously, the surface might be very hard. It might take you a few passes to get through that hard surface layer. But at some point, you'll feel it cutting. And I just want to get a nice, flat, clean surface there with no polished edges. Everything just perfectly flat. When I think I'm done, I'm going to check this direction to make sure this surface is flat this way. What you'll find is quite often, because of the filing, you'll make it a little bit concave. So this will allow you to check and see how that looks. If you've got a high spot here or there, then continue filing until it's straight across, because that'll make the next step, when we're actually putting this on a stone, much easier and go more quickly. Okay, I'm back at the diamond stone. Let's rinse that off. So now I want to stone this edge. Now if I move my arms a lot, because my elbows are bending, my shoulders are bending, it's difficult to keep it square here. So what I'm going to do, instead of just moving my arms, I'm going to lock my arms against my body, and I'm going to move my whole body. So if I move my arms away, you can see I'm moving my legs, and that gives me a much more stable grind. I'm much more able to maintain one bevel there. If I'm rocking it, it rounds that, and it makes it more difficult to do the next step. So this was filed pretty flat, so hopefully this will go fairly quickly. And I'm just, as I'm doing this, as I'm moving my body back and forth, I'm just sighting right down here. My eyeballs are kind of on either side of the scraper, and that allows me to really get a sense I'm not rocking. Okay, I'm easing up the pressure, and we'll take a look at this. So I'm just sighting down here, looking at the reflection. Looks very consistent the whole way. Because this was pretty flat when I started, this went quickly. That's why you really want to make sure this is flat, not concave or convex. And if I hold this at an angle, I'm trying to see if I see any reflection right off of that corner. Any reflection there would indicate a little bit of rounding, which means I'm not going to be able to get this very sharp. So that looks really good to me. And it actually feels sharp now if I run my finger or my thumb over there. Not like that, but at a very almost 90-degree angle here. So I'm going to switch to my finer stone, diamond stone. Same thing. I want to get that as clean as possible. And once again, if I was doing this on my water stones, it tends to get them out of flat fairly quickly, particularly if you go in a straight line. So never do that. You always want to turn it and go at an angle to your motion. Okay, and I'm going to hit this face again, just to clean up any burr there. Very light touch. Once again, make sure I pick that up by rolling it off. And that looks really clean. So I think I'm in good shape there for the next step. For this next step, I've got a burnisher here, and I've got this nice looking edge, and I'm going to put a little bit of oil on here. It doesn't really matter what. This is camellia oil, could be WD-40, whatever, just a light oil. Now the first step is just to burnish the face flat. Okay, I I'm just going to be running the burnisher across the face. It's not going to feel like you're doing anything, but that's just going to get things nice and smooth there. So I'm holding the scraper with my left hand. I'm near the edge of the bench here. I've got my thumb over the scraper here, right? I want to make sure I don't let this drop. That's going to be the kiss of death if you do that for getting this thing sharp. So I'm holding this flat on the scraper, and I'm going to push down on that edge, keeping it flat, about 3 or 4 times. All right, so we've just smoothed that edge a little bit. All right, now what we're trying to do is create a hook that comes off of the edge. So to get that started, I'm going to move the scraper over about 1 inch from the edge, and now I'm going to put the pressure halfway between the edge of the workbench and the scraper. So now I have a slight angle relative to the face of the scraper, and I'm going to use moderate pressure, and just 1 stroke I'm going to move down that direction away from me. And what's going to happen is right at the edge we're going to kind of mash the metal a little bit and push the metal off the edge, and we'll look at a picture of that in a sec. So just moderate pressure, 1 pass. Don't do more than 1 pass. And we've affected maybe about 1/2 of 128th of an inch there. Okay, about 128th. About 10 thousandths, I think, of the metal there. We've pushed it off the edge a little bit. So the last step is to actually now push that metal back so it creates a little bit of a hook on the face of the scraper. So we'll do that next. All right, the last thing I'm going to do is create the hook. So the hook is going to be a little bit of metal that comes off of the side. So this looks very simple, but this is the most critical part of this. So I want to hold the scraper so it's facing away from me and vertical. I'm going to hold my burnisher perpendicular this way, but at about a 5-degree angle, not much more than that. And what I want to do, I'm going to slide the burnisher down the scraper like that, basically just bending at my elbow. And we're going to take that metal that we had previously pushed up this way, and we're going to bend it that way a little bit. So I want to push just hard enough to create that hook, but not so hard that we create like a big wave. I like to call it a tsunami of metal going off the edge there. So what I'm going to do, about 5 degrees relative to horizontal, just moderate pressure, and the pressure is going to vary depending on your scraper and the radius of the burnisher, or the diameter. This particular burnisher has several different radii on it. So that looks like this. Okay, so that now, if I run my thumb like that, once again I want to be about perpendicular, not like that. That feels very sharp. So we'll try that on a piece of wood. I'm going to take a minute here to show you some electron microscope images taken of a scraper after these various steps here. And I'll put a link in the description to the website so you can take a closer look at these and the descriptions if you want. So this first image shows the surface of the scraper. So this is the face of the scraper. The edge that we filed is over here. And you can see this line is drawn on here. This line is the original surface. And the burnishing process, the second step in burnishing, where we've got the scraper about 1 inch away from the edge of the workbench, and we just turn that burr on the face, or I should say on the edge. We're pushing the metal off to the edge. So the metal's being pushed this direction. And it's a little hard to see here. We'll see it in the next image. That initial edge that's pushed is off to the side over here on the right. The metal has been deformed by about that much. We've kind of mashed it down that far. And to give you a sense of scale, this is 30 micrometers here, which is a little over 1,000th of an inch. So this is really zoomed in. So this distance is roughly 10 thousandths, which is about the thickness of, say, 3 pieces of paper. So we're really, really zoomed in here. So that's really all you're doing with that step in burnishing, where we're trying to push the metal off in that direction. This next image is zoomed in more. Notice this is 10 micrometers now instead of 30. So we're just looking at the edge. So you can get a sense here now that this is the metal that has been pushed off of the face onto the edge. So that's what we're really trying to accomplish in this step. Now you can see the hook. So we're still looking at the face. This is the same face as before. And this is the last burnishing step where we've pushed the metal towards the face. So this is the hook. This is the edge that is going to create our shaving. This cut here was done previously just to emphasize what's happening here. You've seen this cut in the other steps or in the other pictures. So that's a nice hook. That's what we're trying to do. And notice, if we look at the scale here, that's roughly 10, maybe 15 microns. So that's really, really small. It does not take much of a hook to create a nice shaving when you're using a scraper. This last image, now this has been flipped around. So now the face is still on top here, but the edge is on the left. So this is reversed from the previous image. It's more zoomed in, but notice this is a hook that's been turned too far. Notice it's been rolled over. So this was probably done at too steep an angle with a burnisher or by pushing too hard. So this is what we're trying to avoid. Okay, so here we go. Now the scraper can be pushed or pulled. I'm going to push it the first time here. I want to hold the scraper with my thumbs down low if I'm going to push. So my thumbs are almost touching the wood and my fingers are off to the side. I'm not like this. I'm out to the side. All right? And you want to find the sweet spot of the angle here. So if you start really high, and I'm going to bend this a little bit. Start really high, it shouldn't cut. But as you start to move forward and you roll the scraper down, at some point you'll feel it bite. If you just go a little bit lower than that angle, that's usually about the sweet spot of where it's going to cut. So let's go down. Okay, so that's working okay. I'm getting a nice shaving there. All right, that looks pretty good. We could actually probably unroll that. It's a little tricky to do, but there we go. So that's a nice shaving off a scraper. I'm happy with that. I'm going to try pulling it. So to pull it towards me, now I'm going to kind of reverse things. I need my fingers close together. Notice they're down low, but my thumbs are far apart because I want to bend it this way, so only the center part of the scraper is doing the work. So once again, I need to find that angle, and then I'm getting a nice shaving again. There we go. That looks great. So that's a nice sharp scraper. That's going to work That's going to work really, really well. So that's it. It looks simple. It is simple once you figure it out. You just need to practice until you get it right.